We will have the conversations that few are prepared to have, and more importantly, conversations centered on rationality. Subscribe now to listen to Rational Voices with Sunil. So amazing to have you on the podcast. We've had so many requests to have you on here. How have you been?
Good. Really good, actually. I feel like especially the last 2 months, 3 months have been the most lovely of the last few years, because basically and we'll get into it in more detail, but when the appeal hearing happened, like the moment the judges said, like, court adjourned, I have physically felt this weight lift off me, because I was like, I fought as hard as I could. There's literally right now nothing more that I can do. It's in their hands, and I know that what we've argued is right, and there we go. So I've been, for years being a ball of anxiety and stress, I've felt a little bit lighter and much more like myself for just the first time in a really long time. So I'm kind of enjoying life again, which is really
Amazing.
not over it all, but I'm still in the thick of it, but it's a different realm, so it's nice.
For the listeners who are unaware of what you're talking about, it'd be great to get an overview of everything.
Okay. So basically, in 2018, my mum and I came up with an idea to create a social networking app exclusively for women. And it would be where women would specifically be using it to either connect and chat. There'd be lesbian dating on there, also roommates and freelance work sort of stuff, like cleaners and things like that. Pregnancy, motherhood, very woman-specific things, and but being able to go to a little corner of the internet where they could have basically a female support network in the palm of their hand. The inspiration came from my previous life to this. I'd worked in Hollywood. I was a screenwriter, and I was there in the pre-Me Too world. We say pre-Me Too like it's changed. But it was as bad as everyone thinks it is, and I'd experienced a lot of stuff. And so when I came back to Australia, I was very much I was a shell of a person, actually. I was very, very bad. And I went and did a little bit of therapy just to get the tools to be able to recover from it all. And that one light bulb moment, it wasn't like the, oh, wow, you're cured moment, but just a light bulb moment I had was my therapist said, like, you would have been so much better if you'd had a strong female support network in your life. I was like, yeah, like I would have. And when I thought of it in the context of what was happening of Me Too, all these women that were coming out, and the women that in the industry that I was talking to, who'd also had things happen like I had, but we didn't know that it was happening. It was like, oh, wow, imagine if we'd all actually just spoken about this. And so it was just sort of this idea of a place where women could connect, basically. I didn't know about gender ideology. I'd obviously heard of LGBT. I didn't live under a rock, but I was a good little progressive, I suppose. I was in a little bubble on Twitter. I didn't tweet at the time. I was a reader of it, and I only followed people who were anti-Trump and commentators of that nature. And so I just missed it. I just missed it from like 2015. I would have been in that bubble, I think. And so basically we came up with the idea for the app. We developed it. We got the investment round, built the app. I didn't build it, but we had people who know what they're doing, build the app. We're on the App Store and Google Play, getting ready to launch. And February 7, 2020, I woke up. We were like under attack by thousands and thousands of men calling us TERFs. They'd gotten onto the app. So obviously to create an online space, it's women only. It's like, how would you do that? And there is this technology. It's AI technology that can scan a photo and tell if you're male or female. And I really liked that at the time. I think it was really non-controversial because, one, we can tell if someone's male or female by looking at them, and two, we take selfies all the time. So I was like, sort of marrying the old and the new technologies, and how cool is that? So we didn't have all of that properly set up because we were just sort of ironing out bugs. It was beta testing phase. Woke up, they were on the app. They were creating profiles saying kill TERFs. I'd never heard the word TERF before. They'd written thousands upon thousands of one-star reviews, so sent us into an algorithmic black hole. I remember distinctly saying to my mum, this will blow over. Just let it blow over a few months. But one of the things the trans activist did say to me was, go, educate yourself, which at the time I was like, well, that's kind of a fair comment. I'm sort of pleased they did say it, because I think what I did is I typed in the word TERF into Google or something like that, because I'd never heard it before. And that's where I was introduced to the likes of Julie Bindel and Helen Joyce and Jane Clare Jones and Kelly J. Keane and who else are the really prominent British TERFs that were talking about this? This is 2020. Kara Dansky in the US, and then thousands of women who were anonymous on Twitter, and they were also just sort of saying things like just read and educate yourself. And so I just did. I just went for months reading and watching everything I could, going, my God, I had no idea that this was happening. I was quite mortified. Then I started speaking out about it. All the while, the app was existing. Women were using it. So we sort of just had to get it out there and hope for the best. We didn't get to control our own launch. Then cut to 2021, end of 2021, beginning of 2022, I got an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint from a man who calls himself Tickle, who claimed that I had removed him from the app and that he identified as a woman. And to settle it in the Australian Human Rights Commission, I'd have had to let him on, let all men who claim to be women on, pay him $20,000, go to sex and gender education classes, wow, and apologize. I'm sorry, you're a man. And what was it? The most sinister one was moderate the content on the platform so that men who claim to be women weren't offended by what women were saying. So, not only did he want in, but they wanted to control it. And I just couldn't agree to any of that. I was like, absolutely no way. I didn't think that the Australian Human Rights Commission was mediating it in any way that there was like some conflict, or that there was that I could possibly have been not guilty. Basically, I was being treated as you're naughty, you've done a bad thing.
Right.
So I said no to conciliation, and I said no to all of the demands. So it escalated to the federal court, and it became the first sex versus gender identity discrimination case in the world to test it. And we lost the first round. So in Australia's federal court, Tickle won. So the case was called Giggle v. Tickle. I don't know if I said the app was called Giggle. His name's Tickle. It can't make this up. It's the stupidest thing you can imagine. This is my life. And so he won. The judge said that sex is changeable. It's not, obviously. I mean, documents are changeable.
Yeah.
But so it's happened, but sex isn't.
What's the response like when that happened then, across, did you get lots of support? What happened after that ruling had happened?
Yeah, I get lots and lots of support. I actually think it's quite interesting. I don't know if people have tracked this as much as I have. I've had lots of support from regular people. People wouldn't see that. I get lots of direct messages or emails, and it's really, really lovely. And in Australia, there's the Australian newspaper and Sky News that are on my side, that are really good on this issue. And so that's nice. And they give me a platform to speak. All other media in Australia is captured by gender ideology. The most number one being the ABC, which is like the BBC. And I find it really interesting that these organizations that are so all in on gender ideology and trans rights are under attack, they never platform this one person who, from their perspective, won them their rights right now. Like, he's just not shown. He's, in my opinion, very much hidden from it all. And I sort of criticize this now because they've criticized me in the case, saying that I go on interviews all the time. I'm doing interviews and I'm calling him a man. I'm like, yes, because that's the premise of the case, because he is a man. Like, I'm fully behind his right to call himself whatever he wants. That's fine. you can call yourself a woman. I don't care if you're just called. I can't control what anyone calls themselves, so that I have no problem with it. But but no, they've been very, very critical in what damage it's paid to them, because I've called the man in interviews, but I'm like, but one, I'm telling the truth, and two, because I was taken to court for knowing that he is a man and for running a woman-only space, I've had to raise money to pay for it because it's millions of dollars. Not a free ride. It's really, really expensive, and that's part of the reason why the law went unchallenged in Australia as long as it did, because who would be insane enough to do this? It was a fly. And so, yeah, I just think that I find it interesting that how much the other side, even if I just take it away from the person, that they don't want to speak about the case, even in general. And I think it's because they don't want the people who are sort of all in on this to be aware that women are fighting back, that women actually do also have a very good argument for why we need rights and want rights. And so they are trying to keep this bubble going. But so, while I've gotten great support, not in a larger conversation.
So what's the status of the court at the moment with this case?
So we appealed. So that was heard in August, and literally any day now. Seriously,
wow.
any day. We will get a decision.
Wow.
The federal court closes, the courts close for the year on the 19th of December. My prediction is we get this decision on the 19th of December.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's what I'm waiting for. But the full Court of Appeal last sitting of the year closes this Friday, so in 3 days. So some of the judges, they'd be either, I have no idea what any of them are doing, but if they are listening to other cases or anything like that, that stops on Friday, and then they've got until the 19th of December to deliver a judgment. It could be really cruel. They could deliver it next year when it opens, but unlikely. I would say that they're going to end the year with this rather than open.
How do you feel in terms of expectations for the result? The reason I ask, because I feel like in the UK, since the Supreme Court ruling, since maybe even Trump in America, the election, so many lifelong Democrats, so I know, who voted for Trump solely based on this issue. So do you feel the mood changing, and is your expectations maybe more optimistic than before following those two things?
Yes. So I'll certainly say my best friend in the US in 2016 when Trump won, she cried. And in 2024, was it? She voted for him. So yeah, like people change. Things change, yeah. And on because of this issue. She wanted female in the spaces. But yeah, no, I'm actually I have waves. I am overall very optimistic because I think that reality wins. Eventually truth wins. I think that we will all win. And even if on my case specifically, yes, I am optimistic, but I have moments of what if? Oh my God. Because the next court to go to after this is the High Court, which is like the Supreme Court in the UK. So the highest court in the land. The process just unfortunately is you've just got to go through the federal court, then you've got a federal court of appeal, and then the High Court. So it'd be another 18 months of my life. Another $1 million or something. I can respect the process of law. I mean, this is the stupidest premise of a case. It's like, this person is obviously a male human being, a man, an adult human male, so therefore a man. My platform was for adult human females, women. Case closed. As I said, call yourself what you want, but there's just the fact. And when we've gone through and looked at the construction of the law, and there's basically in 2013 an amendment put into Australia's Sex Discrimination Act of gender identity. And I used to say this, that it muddled it, and it did. It's definitely what got us here. But if you actually go and look at the history and you dive into it and you put it all together, there is no muddling. The actual problem is that we have the Australian Human Rights Commission that is pushing this bullshit. That's the problem. If we took out the Australian Human Rights Commission's absolute determination to put this ideological nonsense into law, we wouldn't be in court.
Right.
There'd be no, because there was no intention, there's no evidence of any intention in Australia for gender identity to override the rights of women. But
Got
the
it.
Australian Human Rights Commission is interpreting it for it does. So their argument is that so you've got the Sex Discrimination Commissioner within the Australian Human Rights Commission arguing that gender identity is equal to or above sex in the Sex Discrimination Act. So if you have something that is on the basis of sex, like a female-only space, gender identity will trump that.
Crazy.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And they're lying through their teeth. But I think once you accept the premise that everything else that flows from it is right. So, I mean, I would have been shocked at any point if there'd been truth thrown our way. I mean, they said some pretty crazy stuff, and I always recommend people go and read it on the Federal Court website. If you just, the Federal Court of Australia website, if you type in Tickle v. Giggle, the whole case file is there. You can read every submission everyone has ever made into it. And I mean, DM me when you get to the point where the Sex Discrimination Commissioner is asking for pregnancy protections for men who claim to be women. I mean, that's when I started drinking heavily when I was reading that. It was like 9 o'clock at night. I was like, this is just wild. And so basically we've got a Human Rights Commission that is arguing for protections in law for people that they don't need to take away protections for a group that they do need. It's madness. It's not sustainable. So overall, I think we'll win overall. This is not, they're saying nonsense. They've brought ideology to a evidence fight. What a mistake that is. But, you know, it's going to be this round that we win. I don't know. Let's hope so.
It's just crazy. Do you feel like the process, because of how expensive and hard it is that the whole point of this, just to almost, you know, you've obviously strong character and you're able to go through this, but I can't imagine many people would have the courage to keep on going. Do you think that's the whole point of this process, to just almost destroy you? I just don't understand how difficult this process is.
Everyone who's been through this has said the process is the punishment, and it is. And like, it's one of those things. How many times in life do we live through these things where you're like, God, if I knew then what I know now. I didn't know what litigation was like. You know, I was told like it will be quite a few years. Maybe you think, okay, but I was just sitting there going, well, I'm right, so it's fine. But the ups and downs of it are horrific. It is the worst roller coaster you've ever been on, and I don't even like normal roller coasters. And as I said earlier, like, in a way, you'd have to be insane to do this, or just naive. I just didn't know, but I knew I was right. I knew that I mean, if I just gave in to his demands, I mean, I've just lost my startup. I've lost everything I've just been working towards. I've just given up. Like, that's just not how it works. And also, when I got the Australian Human Rights Commission complaint, I was 14 weeks pregnant when I got it. And when I was deciding whether or not to settle, like when it got to that part of the process, I was like, I mean, she was getting close to being born, about 6 weeks off. And I sat on my balcony one night and I was like, and I knew I was having a girl, and I was like, I'm going to have to teach her to stand up for herself. And so if I don't stand up to myself now on what is really the first really big challenge of this kind in my life, like, how could I teach her to stand up for herself? Because I'd be like, oh, if it feels too hard or it feels impossible, I'll just walk away. So I just didn't really want to set that example. So I was like, okay, this has come my way. I just have to do it. And I don't know if anyone listening, like, it's so easy to talk about, and you can sound so rational talking about it. It's not to say that there haven't been many nights where I've literally just fallen to the floor in exhaustion and tears. And Kath, my lawyer, has had to sit there and just patiently listen. I'm always like, don't speak. Just let me vent. Just let me get it all out and say all of the things that I hate about this. Because, yeah, I hate it. It is punishment. I mean, when he won the first round, he stood on the steps of the federal court saying that this had stolen years of his life.
Crazy.
You can go onto an app. I can't run the app. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's not even equal.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I'm dying to get back to doing what I want to do. I want to work in that space.
Did you think your having your daughter has provided that almost extra motivation for you to keep going as strongly as you're going? Do you think that was the almost like the ultimate calling in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, she's almost 3.5 now. That's how long this has been going on. Um, and there's, I mean, now like she's talking now. So now, like, not that I talk to her about this, but we talk about like, like Bluey and rainbows and unicorns. But you seeing her process the world and learn things, and you go like, she really does know nothing. Like, as when we're born as humans, we know nothing, and we have to be taught things, and you kind of don't even know that until like how true that is until you have kids. And so, yeah, I suppose that instinct I had turned out to be something, I think, a really important decision that I made. And I do think that it will shape how I will raise her, and hopefully strength that I give to her. I mean, I don't know if she's going to need any strength from me. I think she's actually the most stubborn person I've ever met. So I think she doesn't need any more. She's fine. But just, yeah, that I know that when something inevitably is hard for her in her life, when it's during adolescence or when she's older, that I'll be able to sit there and be like, actually, I have some experience here. That's a nice silver lining, to be able to help someone and be like, I can guide you through.
I mean, so following the ruling where you initially lost, what was the plan? Did you expect to lose when it first went to court? Was that the expectation?
Well, expectation's too strong of a word. I had little hope. Sometimes I do say I never expected to win, but I don't mean it in that way. I had little hope. I just thought, I knew we were right, but the judge had been always very hostile to us, even in like, because the stuff like happens with judges behind the scenes where you don't just like ask the different permissions or for extensions and things like that. It's always quite hostile to us. Whereas I felt like with the other side, if they said jump, we said how high. And I just thought it's just one judge where it is politically in the zeitgeist, even in the world. I didn't think enough had changed yet, that he was going to be this like brave one guy to go against it, because we got the decision literally about 2 weeks before Trump started campaigning on it, because Trump started campaigning really late in his campaign. So it's in 2024, August 2024, we got the decision. So beginning of August, I think. So he then not long after started doing his campaign. And then it wasn't until something like 6 months later that 4 Women Scotland won. So while our judge could have led the way with rationality and sanity, he instead ran in the opposite direction. But yeah, I mean, he just listened to the Sex Discrimination Commissioner's incorrect interpretation of the law and went with that.
I mean, what is the general public reaction in Australia? I just feel like it in UK and maybe US, definitely the silent majority would agree with yourself, and they would find it absolutely absurd. What's it like in Australia?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the silent majority. But I mean, if you are someone who's only an ABC reader, or watcher, so like equivalent to BBC, or if you're the Guardian or the Sydney Morning Herald, your perception of this issue is going to be very different. So, for example, a few weeks ago, the Australian newspaper, which has become very good on this issue, wasn't a few years ago. But Stephen Rice, a journalist there, has sort of come out guns blazing, and he knows the issue. He's been fantastic. And he wrote a story a few weeks ago. He did an FOI, so Freedom of Information request, of correspondence within the Sex Discrimination Commission about the case. In that, so it's like, it came back as like 87 pages, of 99.9% of it was redacted. But one part that wasn't was the Anna Cody, the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, pondering as to whether they could remove Rimal Salim, who is the UN Special Rapporteur for Violence Against Women. They could remove her from the position because she had intervened in the Tickle v. Giggle case on the side of us, saying, no. Under CEDAW, the UN Convention, which our Sex Discrimination Commission is based on, woman is an adult human female. Men are not included in it. You can't do this, basically. And yeah, wanted her removed from office. If you are reading the ABC, you have no idea this happened. If you're reading the Australian, you do.
So what was the rationale of removing the UN, and why would ABC not even report this?
Question. And the ABC is under fire at the moment, and they are a bit scared. You can tell, sort of in the wake of the BBC stuff a few weeks ago. But why don't the ABC report on it? Because they don't want them to know. I mean, you have this ideology that the moment light is shone on it, it implodes. So they're not going to shine any light on it. Yeah, I mean, in the appeal, I mean, it's crazy. And every time I speak about it and I actually say it out loud, I'm like, this really happened. We had an organization called Equality Australia, who is one of the big leading LGBTQI plus organizations in Australia, came up during same-sex marriage fight. That was their big thing, same-sex marriage, won that, pivoted, and now is TQI plus blah, blah, blah. They intervened in this case specifically against Lesbian Action Group, who had also intervened. Specifically against them, saying that men can be lesbians. That the lesbians are wrong for saying that they can't. Like, this happened in a court of law. And it's hard to take it seriously. Like, it's hard to take court seriously when you're like, what do you mean we're sitting here in courts fighting this? Like, sure, you can have legal definitions, but these are definitions that exist in society. And if the law doesn't reflect what these definitions are in society, the law's not working. It's as simple as that. A lesbian is an adult human female who is exclusively attracted to adult human females. Bam.
Yeah, I just, again, like, this is all so crazy because we've on this podcast, I've had gay people on here, lesbians on here, and what's really interesting with the whole of the trans movement is how they feel like it's been an extremely, especially in recent times, a very almost homophobic movement towards them, and that it's really damaged gay, lesbian rights over the last few years. And so I find it very absurd this scenario that you're talking about, that this actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, how do you pivot from creating an organization to fight for same-sex marriage to not even 10 years, 8 years later, you're in federal court arguing that sex is a spectrum? It makes no sense, other than everything that gender ideology does. It turns it into the opposite of what it was supposed to be. Like, in terms of, not saying it turns men into women, but it tries to turn truth into fiction. It tries to turn lies into truth. It just, I always say to people, like, any claim that gender ideology makes, if you just think of the opposite, that's the truth. It works 100% of the time. And it just, I mean, in a sense, because it just has become such a normal part of my life, like, sometimes I just think of it now as like, oh yeah, that Equality Australia intervened against lesbians, like, in federal court. Of course they did. And you go, it's not until you stop occasionally and go, wait, what? What do you mean that this is wild? And how is this not, why aren't so-called progressive people out there just screaming, going, what are you doing? No, instead they are on the side of heterosexual men claiming to be lesbians. Crazy. And it's like a bad Monty Python skit.
I mean, so one of the things, so you've got the ABC and groups like this in Australia that are maybe pro the trans movement. What about some of the people who, how do I say it? So there's been quite a few people on this podcast, and I had this chat quite along with Helen Joyce on this particularly, where I was saying I find it very frustrating when there's so many people who I know personally, educated people, who will never speak out on this issue, even though they know quite clearly, and they'll say it to me personally, and then they say it to you personally, they agree with you, but they don't necessarily have the courage to say it outright. How do you kind of deal with that? Because my argument often is, well, if you did speak out about this, if you did have the courage to do this, then cases like yours may not have gone as far as it's gone. How do you react to that?
Yeah, I have always tried to have patience with these people, being like, I understand what's at stake because I experienced it. But then Megan Murphy, who's a Canadian feminist, I don't know if you've heard of her, I mean, her life was turned upside down. She's a writer, she's a journalist. She actually is based in Mexico now instead of Canada. She got out because it was so crazy. She was one of the first women in Canada to speak up about it was about misgendering becoming illegal. And that's what turned her life upside down. She was under attack constantly, blah, blah, blah. And she did a post recently, and she was like, about all of these people that are, that are just coming out now, they're saying it's too scary or it's contentious. And she's like, why is my life worth less? Like, why was it okay for them to destroy me, but not you? Why were you sat there and protected yourself? And I agree with her. I'm like, in a way, I've been too kind to these people for such a long time, being like, I understand, and we've all got bills to pay, blah, blah, blah. Well, so do I.
Yep.
And why was it okay for me to have my life destroyed and all of these people just sit back and go, oh, well, she'll sort it out now. She can just be dragged through the court. We don't have to do anything. No, like I'm angry. I think that when I was 35 years old when I first was brought into this nonsense in general, 41. Like my life is happening and I'm sitting here treading water every day trying to find a new way to say men aren't women, men aren't women. I'm like, I am bored out of my mind. Like the people who will never listen to what I say, the people who are so far in the cult, never speaking to them. I don't care about them. They'll come out when it suits them.
Yeah.
You can't rationalize with those people. So they're not my specific concern. Great for people who are focused on that, but it's not mine. I'm just trying to speak to normal people who don't understand what's going on or are a little bit on the fence or who know what's going on and go, well, I can't speak up. It's like, yes, you can. Because if everyone who knew this was nonsense spoke up in the same week, they can't cancel everyone. There's you couldn't
Definitely.
replace the workforce that quickly. Like you literally can't. So it would be great if everyone collectively got together and went, okay, pens down, we're all going to stand up and just go, no more. Get this out of our law, get this out of our institutions, get this out of schools, get this out of medicine. And if everyone said it, politicians would have to listen. Like they don't give a shit about issues unless it's a votes issue. Like they very rarely do things just for the good of it, like morality's sake. And so, yeah, I've lost my patience with them all because I'm just sitting here going like, I know you all know I'm right. You know I'm right. You can even think he's a woman. We don't even have to get there. You can think, in my specific case, you can think he's a woman. That still does not justify why you think that it is acceptable for a private citizen to have to be dragged through the courts to fix ambiguity in law. That is politicians, that's legislators' jobs. So it should never have been left to me. So I went to Parliament House just recently and I was saying, I did a Senate briefing and I was saying this to them. I was just like, you don't even have to agree with me, but you just have to acknowledge that there is a law here that's been muddled to some extent and you're doing nothing about it. Like, how dare you? And we know that they know that because the Australian Human Rights Commission is sitting there going, oh, yeah, muddled. At least they did at the beginning. Yeah, it's just it sometimes, yeah. I mean, it does. I could sit here angry and let that fester and get bitter. Where's that going to get me? I've sort of always chosen to try and laugh about it and be lighthearted about it so that I don't lose my mind because I think that that's the other thing of what they want. Like, just let them go crazy. So like, I just won't let them win on that either. And I just think like, eye on the prize, do the work, and then move on.
It's a really good mentality to have because, I think if I was in your position, I'd really struggle with that. Even I just find it, like you said, in terms of if the majority of people just stood up and said, not even, I think if people just honest about their opinions on this, I think the vast majority of us, 80-90% would would agree.
I go as far as 95.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think they would all say Tickle is a man, undisputedly. I don't think anyone. But what's annoying is there's lots of people who just don't necessarily have the courage or They don't see it as an issue. And I always say it's not an issue until it's your issue, and there's no reason
Mhm.
why tomorrow this could be your issue. And I think it's sad what's happened to yourself, Graham Linhan, and people like this who are maybe
Yeah.
very early on, were one of the first people to
But
talk about this.
also, I think that it is everyone's issue right now. Like even the people who think like, oh, okay, like I'm not creating a woman only space, for example, so this isn't going to affect me. If you want to be able to speak freely, then this affects you. It's that simple. And if you've chosen already the decision to censor yourself on this, it doesn't end well. Like you're relying on people to speak up so that you could eventually do the same thing. So you're relying on other people to do the work. And as I've said for years, I've been like, I get it. Like, and those who can't speak up, just support the ones who can, and we're working together. And I do agree with that to a point. And there are a lot of people, I get messages a lot of the time from people being like, I cannot speak up, but I will support you in every which way I can. And they're very generous and they do. So I'm not criticizing that, but I'm being like, if all of you actually just spoke up, this would end.
So
I think it's just physics. Like it just would.
100%. Do you in Australia is that movement change? Because I don't know, in UK it's hard to tell. At times after the Supreme Court ruling, I was thinking this would really be a really big sign for the UK. But there's been people who have doubled down. There's people that are ignoring the ruling, and so I don't think it's. I think it is slowly going away, but it's definitely not fully gone away. What about in Australia?
Well, I think we're all, in terms of the UK, I think we're all in a little bit of shock at the moment about this NHS children puberty blocker trial that is coming on. That we're just going, like, how did we get here? What's going on? Because I keep posting this. I'm just like, I don't understand why you have to bring new children into this trial. There are already young people that have been on these drugs. There are people that have gone off them. You've got a data set, like you've got people to study. Why would you bring in more? And why would you experiment medically on children? Like I came around up in the 90s, like when the Body Shop's big slogan was no animal test, like no testing on animals. And now it's like totally fine to test on children. What are you talking about? I'm against both, by the way, but it's just like, where are we going? You don't medically test on 10-year-olds. Especially for something like this one, when if you just went and spoke to the detransitioners, you've got the answers. Like there's literally groups of people that have the answers to the questions they want. So yeah, I think we're all a bit like just going like UK, like you're a guiding light. Like how is this happening? And I do think that lots of places are like, yeah, trying to ignore the law. I think it's really interesting how many institutions seem totally prepared to ignore the law when it's men who claim to be women, but not when it's just women. Like then there's no like who like just loopholes they'll create there. But if it's the men, oh, it's like this is not clear at all. I just think that these people have had a decade of unprecedented political capital and have done nothing with it. They could have spent 10 years creating any space and service that they need, all government funded, and there probably wouldn't be that much of a fight. Like I'm not opposed to there being in sort of government funded buildings and a unisex bathroom option. I think it would be great with dads or daughters. I think there's a need for it in society. And then people who don't want to use male or female can also use it. Fine. And all of those women who sit there saying that they don't care about men in their spaces, great, off you go. Use the unisex bathroom. Have fun. But I as more like, 100 years ago, dads weren't out with their daughters really. Now they are. Maybe society has to cater to it. And as a byproduct, this would also get fixed. Like I think that while I'm totally against this ideology and I want it done, it's just there's things that could have happened that it wouldn't have had to explode to the extent that it had. That they could have just created unisex spaces. There'd be some guys in dresses out there and you'd go, okay, maybe sometimes I cross the street. But
Yeah.
and that's obviously the medicalization of children is a different issue. But I'm just talking in that sense about the men who claim to be women. It didn't have to be this way. It's very much they chose it to be this way because their fight was to get into female spaces. That is the beginning and end of what they want.
You mentioned there about the NHS child blocker testing going on. In Australia, is it similar? Are we seeing children being transitioned this sort of stuff,
Mhm.
or is it not as common?
Oh, no. It's Helen Joyce actually pushes things worse here, which I haven't delved into that yet. I'll do it soon when I've got the, sometimes you just need to like build up the capacity to go and dive into it, in terms of what's actually worse. But I know it's bad here. In Queensland, the state that I live in, they are currently doing a review, and I'm quite optimistic about that. The government here is being quite good. It's a new government. It is a conservative government. They're doing things very quietly. And so, and I know people within the government, and the leader of it, Chris Foley, he wants to do things quite quietly. He doesn't want to make a big deal about everything and make it a drama and chaos, basically. So I've tried to be like, okay, I'll respect that and I won't bring attention to it either. But he is doing good things. He is saying that bathrooms are based on sex, and that while they haven't put it into legislation in Queensland yet, the government's position is that a woman is an adult human female. So they're taking steps. They're doing this review. It could even come out this week, actually, of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. I'm optimistic. Then the federal government is doing a review. I anticipate that they'll ban puberty blockers next year sometime. I don't know. Maybe this UK thing's going to stop them from. I don't know. Part of me thinks this UK thing isn't going to go ahead. It's going to be such a backlash to it. I don't know. Hopefully, but I'm optimistic with Australia that it's heading in the right direction. But we're like the UK 3 years ago, maybe even 4. But it's not going to take 4 years to catch up, if you get what I mean. Like, it is, right. While it still feels slow, it is getting faster. But it's just, for some reason, Australia just got absolutely captured with this.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think Australia got? I mean, the UK, to be fair to itself, did also get very captured as well. Why do you think Australia's got so captured?
Well, I mean, sometimes I wonder if it's like geography, like because we're sort of so far away. If the activists went like English speaking country, far away, no one's going to pay attention to it. Let's just try and implement it and see if we can get away with it, and then hit the jackpot that they came to like the most sort of relaxed, distracted, hobby driven country that people aren't consumed by politics here like they are in the UK. Everyone's at the beach. But I mean, because the fight in the UK a lot of the time was, to prevent the laws from changing. In Australia, ours is to undo the laws being changed. So the law was changed in 2013. Well, this amendment came in that muddled the law in 2013. So it's been a slightly different fight, and it's easier to prevent a law than it is to undo a law. While it's completely possible to change a law. I say to people all the time, like, you can't change sex, but you can change laws. Like, this is what we're working towards, is the one thing that can actually happen. It's just harder because you've got to get the government on board, and you've got to have the right government in power to do it. And we have a super, super left government in at the moment. So, and they're the government who did the changes. So they decide that the changes they're not going to change.
Has there been other cases like yourself in Australia? Because I think in Australia, your one definitely is called global news, and I think lots of people in the UK will know about it. But have there been other cases like yours?
Yeah, so not like discrimination cases, like not identical, but there are other cases. So Kirralie Smith is the other really important one. So she's a spokeswoman for an organization called Binary. It's a lobbying advocacy group about women's sports, women's spaces, and child protection. She did some posts that there was some men in a women's soccer team, soccer. She did some posts about it. It was all information that was on the public domain, like the photos that she got. It was from the club's website. And said there's men on this team. She was taken to court by 2 of them for apprehensive, what is it called? Apprehension, violence orders and vilification. And she's lost both of all of the cases. So she's waiting. I think it's on the 28th. So in 3 days, she gets the punishment from one of them. He's asking for up to 200,000. But this is, I mean, this is effectively a free speech, a really important case, and it's not getting the attention that it deserves to get. It should be, especially in Australia, it should be a really huge case, because if Kirali doesn't have, like, we don't have free speech, like, say, like in America, we have the implied right of political communication. And so if Kirali doesn't have the implied right of political communication to say that there's men on the women's soccer team, then like literally no one does, like not even politicians, not even journalists, like no, like it's just, it doesn't exist, it's gone. And so she's got, I mean, she's just been fighting for definitely the last 2 years, and she's just going to have another year of it. She's sick of it. And then we've got Gillian Spencer, who is a child psychologist, who she was sort of a whistleblower who spoke out. She lost her job. They're doing a judicial review on that now, especially as, because she's based in Queensland, the same state as I am, the government is seeming to start to get in line with exactly what she's saying. And she's like, hang on, why is my career being destroyed? But in terms of other cases, no, there needs to be more. But at the same time, litigation is expensive. It's time consuming. Like, honestly, I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy necessarily. It's horrible. And look, why would anyone want to do it? You just have to, you think like any normal person would be like, the politicians just have to fix this, but they're not.
Yep. With that example you gave at the start with the male football soccer players, are they, by like, as in they've not even changed their gender, or like what's the?
Oh no,
Like,
they claim to be women.
have they changed their gender? Have they gone? Sorry, have they done surgery? Or okay,
I mean, even in my case, surgery never came up in my case because it doesn't change anything.
yeah,
It doesn't change anything. Like, you can be a male taking pharmaceuticals.
yeah.
I don't know why that's a protected characteristic. And so, yeah, I mean, it's irrelevant. Like, yeah, sure, they call themselves women, and maybe they do things that think that makes a difference. None of it does. That's the whole point, is they're still just men. And
The other
as I said,
female.
call yourself a woman, that's fine. You just can't force others to, and you just shouldn't be protected in law on the basis of being a woman. You can be protected in law on the basis of thinking you're a woman if you want. Okay.
How have the other players not complained? Or is what I'm trying to get at. The other female football players, how are they not feeling uncomfortable? I don't know if they share the same changing room, locker room,
Yeah.
whatever, but how are they not complaining?
I don't know of people on their team, but I know of women who are on opposing teams that have had to play with them. But they get told, like, they'll get punished. Like, it's intimidation. Like, some have left, some have stopped playing. And it's like, it's high ranking, like, recreational amateur competition. So it's not professional. So but they, they just stopped playing it. I know that there's some, I've heard there's some parents who, like, their daughter was aging into that category where they are, the open category. And so I think it's from 17 up or something, maybe 18. And they were like, well, no, she can't play anymore because there's men, that she'd have to compete against men. And we're not willing to do it because it's just a safety thing. Sometimes when I'm thinking of all of this stuff, and I've just been listening to my head's full of just the Helen Webley nonsense of the last few days, is that sometimes I'm like, I can make these arguments without going into safety. It's like, that's obviously a huge portion of it, cool, but I think that's like the next layer. You just start with, is it true? But they're just not women. They could be safe, okay? That doesn't change anything. They're just not women. Like, because sometimes I think that the trans activists want us to go into that and go like, but you're stealing like a medal from a woman or something in the sports one. But it's like they don't even have to win. The fact that a man's in like a woman's swimming race or running race, at least one woman's missed out. She's got nowhere else to go. And so on the basis of inclusion, a woman's been excluded. And the only argument we need for that is it reality that he should be there? Like, is it based on truth? No. So all like anything else beyond that, it's like we're sort of just, it's noise. It's like, it's just not true.
Yeah. I mean, couldn't agree more. And I think it's just the Helen stuff is just getting a lot of attention in the UK. She's been doing lots of different podcasts, and I've not seen all of them, but I've seen the one with Julie Bindel, and I just can't help but not see a very good person when I listen to her. Like there just seems to be something not quite right, and it's worrying that this is somebody that people do take advice from, and I think that's just the scary thing.
Yeah, it's very scary. I was messaging with Andrew Gold because I messaged him to say like I really enjoyed his interview with her, and I think he did a good job. Like he was overly nice to her, but I think that tactically that was a good thing to do. I think that if he was really hostile, then she would have just blamed the whole situation on his hostility. I think he did a really good job of trying to keep it as neutral as possible and try to editorialize as little as possible. I was saying to him, like, I don't think she believes it. Like, I don't think a lot of the really big trans activists believe it. I think they've just found a grift. Because if they believed it, they could defend it better. Like, they don't even know the ideology. When I was watching Andrew Gold's interview with Helen Webley, I was watching it going like, I could answer the questions that Helen is being asked better than she is, because I've spent the last almost 6 years painstakingly studying the ideology. Julie Bindel would be able to do it. Helen Joyce would destroy. Helen Joyce could destroy in that argument as either Helen. If Helen just decided to start arguing as other Helen, she'd win that too. Like, because one of the things that women on this side and men, all of us who are on this side of the fight, what we did is we learned what the other side was saying. The other side has no idea what we're saying. And you see it all the time when they think that we think that there's a way that a woman should act or a way that a woman should look. And it's like, no, there isn't. It's just that you can tell if someone's a woman by looking at them from it's like hundreds of different cues that we're not even picking up. Like, and everyone who's watching us now, like, there's some really obvious things. And then there's ones that you'd be like, you're not even conscious of it. And it doesn't mean that a woman can't look however she wants to look. You still just know that that person's a woman. It can even be when you're walking out, when a woman walk differently. Just there's so many things. And I saw one thing yesterday of accusing us of wanting to punish kids based on what toys they play with, and saying they can only play with a certain type of toy. And I'm like, no, it's you guys. Like, you guys can't seem to realize that kids can play with anything. It means nothing. They're saying they actually are saying if they play with a different kind of toy, then they should be medicalized. Like, it means something. My daughter, and if I was to move my computer, you would see an absolute pile of Matchbox cars. My daughter, who's 3 and a bit, spends most of her time at home playing with little cars and trucks. They're her favorite toys. She has dolls, she has all that sort of stuff, and she'll have phases with it. Her favorite toys are her cars. What am I going to do? Call her non-binary? It's absurd. No, she's a little girl who's developing taste and interests and her imagination. She's growing up. That's it. It's actually meaningless.
I couldn't agree more. And well, the first guest I actually had on this podcast, and I think she's definitely been my biggest eye opener on this whole thing, was a woman called Miriam Grossman, and she talks about it in so much detail, and like the way she talks about like if you have a boy or a girl in the modern day, and there's things you should be saying, and like, you know, it's okay to play with, like, for example, cars and trucks. It's okay to like football, soccer. You're still a girl. It's okay to be, you know, these kind of things. You have a broad spectrum, and she very, very simply says it.
One of the really cute things at the moment is my daughter, she'll be 3.5 in January, so she's just shy of 3.5. And this is the first year that she's really getting into Santa, the idea of Santa, as you can see. She's really getting into this. And every day when she wakes up, she asks me, is Santa still at her workshop? Like, yes, Santa is still at his workshop. So she hasn't, she calls, like, she's got a little 1-year-old cousin, a little boy cousin, and she calls Henry a her as well. And Papa, her grandpa, she's like, she refers to Papa as she or her and sometimes. I'm like, because she's 3.5 and she's learning language and there's lots of words she doesn't know yet. And they are the ones she hears the most because she's around her grandma and her mum most of the time. And so that's just what she would be hearing more. It's like, there's no other reason. Like, what, she's sitting here transing Santa, misgendering Santa. No, she's 3.5. She's a kid. Like, just stop putting meaning on things. It's completely fine. When I'm just mortified when I hear people saying like a 3-year-old or 4-year-old can know their gender identity. Like, she doesn't even know when she's hungry, like, because she'll just get interrupted by playing and then suddenly just be starving. Like, kids aren't self-sufficient. They don't know their gender identity. It's just, I can't believe as a society that anyone bought into this. It should have been dismissed immediately. It's stupid, and it's an embarrassment to society in a whole that it got this far.
How much knowledge or how much have you gained in terms of having your daughter, in terms of understanding how almost crazy the trans movement is just by having your daughter? Do you think that's also elevated your knowledge and stuff onto this?
Well, I think just when you have like kid or kids, like, it does just make you aware of people from a different perspective, because usually we've just always known people either like alongside us or ahead of us, but then suddenly there's one in your care who's behind in development to you, so your perspective changes and you understand like how important child protection is. Like, actually, I was talking about it with my sister-in-law the other day, because she's got this little like 1-year-old boy who's sort of starting to become a climber and a runner. And I was days of buying Isabel a leash for when we went out in public, because I would run the lengths of shopping centers chasing her. She was a runner when she was like 18 months to 2. And it got to the point I was just like, I'm just not going to take her to one for a few weeks rather than buying a leash. But I was seriously thinking of buying one, because I was like, what if she just gets away near a road or something and I don't catch her in time? She was so fast. And then the tantrums when you would catch her, it was just, I'd be like, I'm not stealing her, I promise. It was horrible. But it's all part of having kids. And yeah, you learn about like what the lengths that you would be willing to go to protect them, of things that you thought that you would never do. Like, if you'd asked 25-year-old me, should anyone put a child on a leash? Would have been like, are you mad? No, of course not. And then you have one and you're like, oh no, she's a runner. Yeah, you put her on a leash. Yeah, so much changes and your priorities change. And I mean, watching her personality develop, like, there's some parts of her that I can completely see myself in. Like, she is incredibly stubborn and determined. And I'm like, tick, tick, I get that. I know how to deal with this. She's also a really fussy eater. I've always, my entire life, I've said I'm the fussiest eater that you'll ever meet. And any UK TERF watching this who has had to eat in a pub with me anytime I've visited in the last 2 years will go, oh yeah, she is. I eat fries. That's it. It's like, that's exclusively what I eat. And I've always said I've never met anyone fussier than me. I gave birth to her. I'm now experiencing what my mum had to experience. Like, it was hard. She's really fussy. But then, I mean, I don't wear dresses, for example. I wear jeans and shorts and t-shirts. Isabel exclusively wears dresses. So it's not learned behavior. It's just her developing a personality. It's not to say she might not turn around and become someone who hates wearing dresses. I have no idea. She's just in a phase. And so you're just seeing her develop things that are similar to you and not similar. And the idea that anybody would come in and put ideological pressure on natural development is absurd to me. Like, I'm very specific. Like, she goes to kindergarten now 2 days a week. I make sure that there's none of this in her any of the things that they're teaching them. when she goes to school in a few years. The idea that the teachers would just lie, I just wouldn't happen. I would just not let, I would homeschool her before I let teachers lie to her, because how do I teach her to listen to what they say about other things, but not that? I think it's confusing kids.
I was going to ask about schools. What happens in Australia with schools? Go, for example, in the UK, there's so many examples of the ideology being taught at school. I've seen people talk about the red crayon being a blue crayon, identifying as a blue, whatever. It's just analogies and stuff like that in the UK. What about in Australia? Is it similar? And also, is there any way you can not control, but like stop your child being taught that?
Yeah, I mean, there's some Catholic schools and Christian schools where it is better, apparently. There's private schools where it's better, but in public schools, it's there. And it's also not just what's being taught, because you've obviously got ideological capture in that, and that's a concern. The other thing in schools, so you've got obviously these confined groups of kids. And if just one kid comes into that school and says, in this current zeitgeist that we've been in, and says that they're the opposite sex, it corrupts the whole thing for all of them, because suddenly you've got this, say, boy or this girl doing things that none of the other kids are. It's one of the things with gender ideology that is so outrageous, is that when they compare it to gay rights, and it's like, no. Gay rights was actually just getting a group of people the same rights as everyone else. But trans rights is getting a group of people different rights to everybody else, because it's wanting to do, like, have compete. If trans actually wanted the same rights as everybody else, well, males would just compete in the male sex category. They'd go to male spaces. That's the same rights as everybody else. Be a male who goes into a female space or female sports, that's a completely different right to everyone else. No one else has the right to self-identify as whatever they want. You can't walk. It's the silly example, but it proves a point of, like, no one can walk into a bank and say, I identify as a millionaire. It's like, no, we're going to have to see some evidence there, buddy. Like, identity is not a currency in any other capacity. You can't identify as a pilot. You can't identify as a doctor. You can't identify as a lawyer. It was one of the things actually in the case when I was sitting there, I'd sort of make myself laugh when all of these barristers were talking about identity, and you'd have the judges asking them questions and taking it all seriously. And it's like, if I just identified as the judge, you'd all say to me, well, you're not. Which is exactly my point with the guy in the room saying he's a woman. He's just not. So why? Like, it's just this. And why has this one idea been given merit over the other ones? Because a bunch of guys with the fetish of being women claimed it. And that has a lot of power, because men's sex drives create a lot of power in society. And bam, this is where we are. I really do think in part it's that simple. There's a lot of other elements involved, but that part.
I definitely agree. And me and Graham Linehan did a hour and a half long podcast on this, and we showed some of the predatory links within the trans movement and the sides to it, and they are pretty disgusting and horrible. And I think there is massive elements of that are just being also ignored in part of the debate.
I also think that there's a lot more men in society who, they may not have full-blown, say, autogynephilia, like a condition, the actual sort of paraphilia where they arouse being women, but they might have, like other men, who they might be interested in, whether it's in porn or whatever, of watching that kind of stuff. That's where they're at with that journey. So I think there's just a lot of really powerful guys who think that men should be able to do whatever they want. Like, I don't think they think they're women, but I just think they think, like, how dare these uppity women say no to these men? They can do what they want. I think probably in most cases that's probably what's happening. It's like, and maybe we're sort of too far from the Me Too era now for where it to be involved in it in any way. But I think initially, to get Me Too out of the zeitgeist, off the front page, stopping it from having any kind of social impact, a lot of guys in media, it was media guys that were being Me Too. I think
Yeah.
they were like, well, we'll just go all in on this. Like, not only, like, we can't shut these women down because they'll Me Too us if we stay in this zeitgeist. But if we actually say you're a bigot for having boundaries, that helps us. So I just don't think that a lot of powerful people actually believe this nonsense. Like, I don't believe Helen Weberly believes a thing of what she's saying. I just think that they're self-serving, that it works for them, whether it's for profit, if it's for power, if it's for self-preservation. And there's some people who really don't care about the negative impacts of that on other people. There's children or vulnerable young people, or gay people, or women. But fortunately, they're not the majority, because if they were, society would be anarchy, would be in chaos. Like,
Definitely.
the majority of people are good. And that brings us back to why the majority of people do need to speak up. Because just speak up to these bullies.
Yeah.
There's only a few of them. And if we all just spoke up, the power would shift, and to the point where there wasn't power in this ideology anymore. And that's what we want. And then everyone could just return to their lives. To the point where, if you are a man who wears a dress, return to your life doing that. I don't care.
Yeah.
To a point. You know what I mean? Like, into a free society, like, I can't tell you what not to wear, but it's like, just get on with it. Just stop trying to force the rest of us to center it in our lives.
What's been recently happening with yourself and Tickle, the person on the case? Because obviously the court case has happened, and you're still going through it now. But outside of that arena, what else has been happening?
Well, I don't know him, so I've never met him. I've been in a room twice with him in both court hearings, but I don't know him. I'll give you the backstory on what's happened behind the scenes. So when I got the AHRC complaint, I got this call one day from my solicitor saying, you know him. And I'm like, I don't know him. She's like, well, you've had an interaction on Twitter with him. I was like, well, I've had interactions with thousands of people. That doesn't mean I know him. And so she sent me these posts where basically in 2021, I had defended, there was this McIver Ladies Bus at these rock pools in Sydney. It's kind of like the Hampstead Heath pools in London. There's this woman only for 140 years. It's very close to like sort of a nunnery and a women's cancer hospital. So these are the types of women who very much frequented these pools. Anyway, in January 2021, it came under attack from trans activists. They wanted men who claimed to be women to go there. Obviously, this is a government council-funded place. They caved within days. But I was posting in support of them, and there'd been an interaction between me and Tickle where he had said, I'm a trans woman. Women don't have a problem with me in woman-only spaces. And I'd said, now this is something I'm paraphrasing, something along the lines of that. And I'd said, like, I wish you well, but female spaces are females only. And I think you should just respect that. I then blocked him, but especially at the time, this is 2021, this is pre-Elon buying it, of changing it to X. Like, we were all very protective and very careful with our language back then, and probably sometimes used language that we wouldn't use now, just to sort of stop getting our account suspended, basically. So I was always very, very polite, and I would block because then I couldn't, like, they couldn't come after me, basically. And at this particular moment in time, I do remember it was the first time Australian trans activists had ever on Twitter come after me for me defending something. So they were all, calling me a TERF and bigger, blah, blah, blah. So this was brought to my attention during the AHRC discovery time, I suppose, when we were just looking into everything. So I explained that exact story of like, no, I don't know him. But the reason that we knew exactly the date that I blocked him, or presumably this is the date, if he did post this correctly, is he did a post saying, Sall Grover, the CEO of Giggle, has blocked me. And then he went on the app. So if I'm just piecing this together, it's someone I don't know. They've got an anonymous Twitter account, as far as I'm concerned. That they're not notable. Knows exactly my stance on female spaces. Politely said it. And then they go on to the female in the space that I know. And then I will say this, that didn't use it. So created how Giggle was is that you could in multiple any different categories. It's like, there's lots of different things that you could do on it, and you could create profiles in any of them. And so he had created some profiles in that, but he didn't connect with anyone. He didn't talk to a single woman. There's not a single woman on the app that he spoke to. Because we were able to go back and look at that. And so why would you didn't use this app? Like, why would you? It's not like when he was kicked off, he was all of these relationships that he had built were suddenly destroyed. It just doesn't exist. Like we could tell this. And then, but I also don't remember kicking him off because it wasn't an abnormal day. Like occasionally a man would get on and we would just remove him. So it's just not even something that I remember. But he did call and text my phone. This is the first time he became someone in my life. He called and texted my phone. This is just before the AHRC complaint. And I didn't answer the call, but I got a text. It was something like, my name is Roxy Tickle. And I think I'm pretty sure, unless I'm like retroactively remembering it, but I'm pretty sure that's the first time I heard his name because it's the name you remember. And I put his phone, because I had the phone number, I put it into the server and this photo came up on Giggle and I was like, that's a man. And I called my dad and said, this guy that I've blocked from Giggle is called and texted my phone because no one else ever had. Like literally no one else. Since no one else. And I was really creeped out then. Dad said, block him immediately. So I did. So then he did the AHRC complaint. Then I found out that I'd had this one interaction with him before. So this is all that he's putting into place. But then from the AHRC complaint times, this is what, January 2022 until around, I think, April or May this year, he would routinely post screenshots of my tweets onto his Twitter account, mocking me. He would look at tweets that I'd liked and take screenshots of that and post on it. He was watching, well, I don't know if whatever was happening, that he was, the screenshots of my even replies to other tweets, the screenshots would be in minutes of the reply. Like, so someone is watching very closely. And then posting and mocking. He would post and mock tweets or articles about my solicitor, Catherine Deves. And so the whole time, and of it all happening, and you don't want it to distract from the ultimate thing of like, this is women's spaces and this is women's rights. But what's happening in the background is I'm getting like sort of increasingly scared because I'm just being watched. And there's an irony in it because I created a woman-only platform for women to be able to escape this kind of voyeurism that we experience online that guys don't kind of understand. Like, it's like, not that I'm saying that guys always have a pleasant experience online, and that guys, there was a platform that men wanted to create to connect, and there was something they needed. I'm all for it. Fine. I think we should all be catered to. But it was just like, even like he'd do posts of like, oh, Sal's not going to this event. Why? What do you mean? Like, why are you posting about me? And so then in the court case to be punished because they're saying like, basically, how dare I call him a man in media? And I know I called him a man multiple times. Like, what I think their claim was, you called him a man 50 times in media. And I'm like, no, it's many more times than that. But I'm like, but that's the premise of the case. The case exists because I say this is a man and he says he is a woman. I have to be able to talk honestly about the premise of the case. He wants tens of thousands of dollars in damages for me saying that. Meanwhile, he has been mocking me online And like, fine, like I understand that when we go onto a platform like X, Twitter, whatever it's called, that we, you know, there's a certain sort of social contract of like, oh, some people are going to be complete dicks to me. Some people are going to be nice. Some people are going to disagree with what I say. You sort of, you've got to go in knowing that. But there is that block function to have some sort of protectiveness against that. And so all of this was happening. The screenshots were happening from behind a block because he was blocked from my account the entire time. And I mean, still is. I mean, he doesn't have his Twitter account anymore. And how I knew about it is women would, every time it would happen, women would send me the posts. And so there'd just be like an afternoon being inundated with posts because they were watching it all happening. And you go, you know, I feel, in my opinion, and what I feel like I have been in a very abusive situation for coming up 4 years, that the state backs the abusive side. And the abusive side is also the Australian Human Rights Commission, because they don't support me. It is the Sex Discrimination Commission was there primarily originally for women. No problem that it branched out to help men as well. That's fine, but it's forgotten any obligation that it had to women. And like, who's there to help me? I think no one. And when the other thing that happened in all of this is I became a single mum. And there was some, like I don't really ever talk about this, but there was some very high pressure and high stress moments in that process as well. And at one point I did have to go to the police, and I was sitting there listening to what they were saying to me, being like, but I just don't feel like my trust in institutions is so destroyed because I'm currently in court with the Australian Human Rights Commission that is telling me I have no human rights to say no to a man. And now I'm in this other situation where I am so petrified of what you're going to say to me, what you're going to do, who you're going to side with, that I feel powerless in society. And like I remember there was one Sunday night, I think it was just before the first hearing, because that was when it was a very stressful time at home as well. And there was one Sunday night, it must have been, because it must have been going back and forth with lawyers and doing submissions and stuff, and then just being hounded on messages by another guy. And I laid on the floor and I was just like, I literally felt heavy, like I couldn't breathe properly. And I had to remind myself that it's actually not normal for someone to experience this much stress and because I felt like I had a man trying to destroy me personally and a man trying to destroy me professionally and personally, really. And just that, and then if I would just go online and be like, oh, women can be vulnerable in certain situations, someone goes, oh, you're just a man hater. And it's like, somehow I'm fucking not. Like, I don't know how I'm, like, you are lucky that I actually have critical thinking to not just become a man hater, but I don't hate men at all. But you go, wow, just sometimes it basically, my whole point is that I feel like we can't do anything right and no one's on our side, and there's really real human beings and life stories happening behind it but I'm supposed to ignore all of my needs, everything that all women need, and how vulnerable. Like literally the only reason I did not end up in a domestic violence shelter is because my parents are nearby. It's literally the only reason. But there are women who don't have that don't have supportive close family nearby. And so they rely on single-sex services. And so when you're in this situation where you're fighting for single-sex services, you're experiencing the things that would make one of the reasons why we need them. And you've got the government against you. It is quite overwhelming. And meanwhile, being, can I say, stalked by the person taking you to court the whole way, watching everything you do. And that's one of the reasons why I've not spoken about the stuff that's happened behind the scenes, was because I didn't want him to know.
That's so scary. Well, like crazy period. And I mean, it just shows again, like your strength of character, just keep going. And I think, like you said at the start, like you will win sooner or later, whether it's tomorrow, next year, you will 100% win. It's just a matter of when.
Really nice tomorrow.
I mean, it's going to happen, but I mean, you said some like pretty scary stuff and horrific stuff from from Tickle and from what he was doing. How does the I know it's a different, you could argue it's a different case, but how does a court not see some of that stuff and think this is just clearly a vindictive man, somebody you've clearly you've agitated maybe on X Twitter because you from that one comment about the swimming pools, and now it's so clear and obvious that he's gone onto the app because you've annoyed him from that comment and he's deliberately found something to do. It doesn't take a genius to work out what's going on here. How have they not seen that, and how has that not affected their judgment on this?
Screenshotting someone's posts and posting them on Twitter is not unlawful or illegal behavior.
I know it's not unlawful, but you can see like his character
I
and
know,
stuff.
I know what you're saying, yeah, but and I mean, and this is where law is tricky as well. I mean, I post other people's tweets, not people I'm dragging through court,
Yeah,
but
you
I
but
mean,
you're
this,
saying
yeah, but I know,
track
yeah, but this law is tricky with stuff like this, and I mean, would it would be whether I would want to go and do something like like file reports or whatever. But no, I don't want any more drama and any more fights because it would be a completely separate case. Yeah, I mean, you would have thought, I would have thought, and if it was a properly functioning Australian Human Rights Commission complaint, functioning Australian Human Rights Commission, that when they first got the complaint, and when they got the complaint from any man claiming to be a woman wanting to go into a female space, it's not like this was the only one that's ever existed. There's been many to women's gyms and whatnot, but they would just go, no, you are not a woman. You can call yourself one, but in this context, you're not one. So, no. But they didn't. And so you would think that they would do some due diligence, well, assessing a complaint of like, is this vexatious?
exactly.
Yeah. Like, and maybe they didn't, they're in agreement. I have no idea. But as I've always said, from the moment I ever had any interaction with the Australian Human Rights Commission, I have felt that they were against me and they were treating me as if it's civil, so you're not guilty, it's just lawful or unlawful, but like that I was wrong. And that's why I mean, I'm very much of like they need to be disbanded. I think that they're not fit for purpose anymore because, and I'm not speaking about any specific man when I say this comment, but we know that bad men will use legal loopholes in the law to gain access, or legal loopholes in anything to gain access to victims. That's why the law has always been there to create as much safeguarding as possible. And an institution like the Sex Discrimination Commission and the Australian Human Rights Commission is supposed to be there to safeguard and like close the door and close the loophole to those men to make sure that they couldn't go and do bad things. But instead, they're just opening the door. Like you've got, gyms that have vulnerable women in them that men who claim to be women turn up to. And if they're told no, they file an AHRC complaint, have to settle for $10,000 and be let in. They're not vulnerable. They have all of the power. And it's just, I mean, it took such a long time. It's taken a lot of work to even get, like, you said, like, yeah, my case is known. And I mean, not even by accident, like the begging for people to pay attention to it. It's definitely easier now. Like people have, and I'm so grateful that people have been supportive all along. There's been so much behind the scenes that has happened just of just normal, like, yeah, businesses or just normal people who have just gone, I just have to settle because I can't. The mistake, I don't think I'm special or anything in any way. I just, because when I peaked, so to speak, in like 2020, and I went and researched everything, and obviously I was researching all of these amazing UK women, and like Maya Forstater was one of them, and Alison Bailey, and I'd been aware that they'd crowdfunded. So when it was like you're going to have to go to federal court, and like knowing how expensive that would be, and it was expensive for them too, I researched what they did. I was like, okay, I think I could give this a shot. I just bothered to learn, really, and knew enough about it, and knew that I was like, I suppose, I mean, my barrister was very upfront. She said it was going to be years, but God, years is quicker to say than actually living it. I'm been a long time now, so I'm not as like about it as I once was. I'm very over it. I want to move on, but yeah, I mean,
I think especially considering what's gone on personally as well on top of this, it's obviously been some journey, and like your point on safeguarding is so like important, because we talk about quite a lot in this podcast. It's not to say all men are aggressors, but we know for a fact an aggressive male versus an aggressive woman, an aggressive man can cause a lot more damage. So that's why we have these provisions in place for safeguarding. That's the whole point. And I think it's not an anti-male thing to say. It's just a reality of life. We know this for a fact. And so there's nothing wrong with saying that. And I think it's something that's really completely missed by a lot of that trans movement in this, that, I think a normal man will be able to acknowledge that, but that's a fact. And so I don't think it's anything remotely controversial.
Yeah, and I think, it's like, obviously, like, especially one of the trans activist arguments is always, it's like, women are most likely to be attacked by, men they know. It's like, yeah, I mean, like, that is a huge statistic. But that's like, it's unfortunately not the only statistic. Women are also attacked by strangers. Like, and it's just something that happens, and we just try to mitigate it as much as possible. And I just, and I think that if I go back to, the early days of Giggle, I just think that the natural evolution of female-only spaces is that they'll go online when we live our lives. Like, I don't think the natural evolution of female spaces is that they include men. And I think that, gosh, I mean, we're still in the infancy of the internet. I mean, imagine if we really do go into these metaverses. There's going to need to be female-only metaverses, because
Definitely.
even in the little bits that we've heard from what behavior on them already, of like doing stuff to avatars, like the women avatars and things, like, yeah, it's going to be brutal out there. And so we're going to need women-only spaces online. Like this, it is the next sort of frontier, so to speak. And it's a place where women need protection as well. And it should be non-controversial to say that. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. We live so much of our lives online. A lot of what exists in this world is just going to exist there too.
Definitely. Well, what are the plans for Giggle going forward? Do you after this podcast, what will happen with Giggle?
Well, so we will relaunch it. Like there's no world in which I'm relaunching an app that has men on it. Like that, just no. Like it will be a woman-only app, and if I have to fight to the High Court to do it, I will. And it's just like I just have no doubt that eventually we will win. And there's like other little, would the Australian legislation basically push a woman-owned business for women out of the country? Let's see. Hopefully they don't.
Interesting. Well, Sal, it's been amazing speaking to you. I could carry on talking to you, but I'm conscious of time. We always end on the same question, which is an unpopular opinion you have that you think should be popular.
Okay, so this might sound like contradicts stuff I've said. I don't think it does though, and I don't know how unpopular it is, but I know that there'd be some women that would push back on me with this, but I think it was a mistake to mainstream the fight against gender ideology as just about women's rights. I think we're the canary in the coal mine. And obviously I come at this from women's rights. It's how I was brought into it. And I think that it is one of the, I mean, I think all of them, everything is equally as important. But I think that maybe if we come at it from just the truth element of just it's not true and led with that. Some did. I'm just saying, I just don't, because the sad reality in this world is that a lot of men and a depressing amount of women don't give a fuck about women's rights. And so we created this scenario where we had to get people to care about two things, whereas most people care about the truth to a point. And you can then very quickly make people realize how it does impact them. So that I've had pushback from when I say that, and a lot of people think that I'm belittling the women's rights fight or something, or no, not at all. Obviously, that's my place in this fight. But yeah, I think that we should have maybe, I think not just in the past, I think going forward, because these people are going to double down and keep going. I think that we need to lead with, it's just not true. This is fact versus fiction. This is reality versus fantasy. That's it. And then explain the differences that are the most important.
Interesting. I mean, it makes sense. Do you think people would have got that straight away with the truth?
Who knows? Who knows? Maybe there was no possible way to get people on board with this quickly. But in terms of, sometimes there's been a few hostile people that I have faced in real life who don't agree with me. And the quickest way I've gotten them to, it's not like they're completely on board with me immediately, but when I've gone the truth element or aspect of them and the reality and fantasy and how important that is, it is got all the different scenarios of where that is relevant in any other capacity, has steered the conversation into a much more amicable conversation where we've been able to find the things that we agree on and then being like, okay, and so this is just an extension of that, rather than having to sit there, because part of my position on this, it got to the point of, I hate the complete dismissal of women's rights, and you feel like you're just banging your head against a brick wall. And as I said before, like someone will be like, well, but most attacks of women happen in the home. It's like, not for the women, the attacks don't happen in the home. And it's like, now, but what happens is that now we've derailed the conversation. Now we're not talking about this fake thing anymore of these men claiming to be women. Now I'm sitting here having to defend women getting attacked. We're having a complete argument about that. It completely derails it. But if you just stick with fact and fiction, I find that you stay in that world, that topic, that subject, much more. And there's less room for them to derail it, because they can't go, it's only so many times I think, well, it is true, it is true, it is true. It's like, yeah, but, well, you're going to have to prove that, because you can't just say something's true. You have to prove it. And I've had more success. So if anyone has failed, please let me know. Or if anyone, I'm constantly, anyone who's got better ideas, let us know. We want to end this. I'm like, I'm happy. Everyone just throw shit at a wall or whatever sticks.
It's interesting. I think the truth thing would be, I think maybe with your also like ABCs, BBCs, because they talk a lot about trying to find the truth, and they have that massive argument. Maybe with those, I can see how that would maybe work more with them. And I mean, for me, it's just been really interesting. I think the women rights stuff was, I think, how I first was like, wow, this is actually crazy, and that this is messed up. And now the more and more people I speak to, even now gay rights, and I'm like, wow, this is, even I never even thought of that like over a year or two ago. I never thought how this impacts them. Now I'm like, wow, this actually seriously
when I first was told by the trans activist to go and research it, and I went on, I mean, I must have gotten onto Twitter really quickly, whether that's where Google led me to, when I typed in TERF. And I found all these women, I found, so the two things that I found like within an hour, like minutes, was that lesbians were told that they had to accept men who claimed to be women as lesbians. And I was like, well, that's absurd. And then women who were fighting to end female genital mutilation they were being attacked because, one, because of the language they used, and two, because it's horrific reasons why they were being attacked. They didn't want. I don't even want to get into it. And I was just like, well, this can't be good. And that's, even then, the thing that first came to me was like, well, hang on, is it true? Is it not? It's not true. Like, it's so blatantly not true. So I started from there straight away. It's just not true. And that's kind of been my guiding light with it all, because there's so many different facets to this ideology that you have to, and so many different victims of it. You know, that, and my feelings, say, towards a vulnerable young woman being like a teen, being caught up in this, and also young boys, especially young gay boys, being caught up in this. But then we're going to be talking about them in completely different ways, and the ways to deal with them, of what sort of is the of the best, like the sort of the true ways to deal with it are going to be different, or what's true in those scenarios is going to be different, even though like the reality is the same. The bedrock is theirs, and no one can change sex, blah, 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 these things, but just the remedies are going to be slightly different, and what's real there. And then you've got, 45-year-old men claiming suddenly that they're women. I mean, that's just a totally different scenario there as well. So I just think, like, yeah, while there's, I don't know, it's just all the things. Is it true? Is it not?
Agreed. I think it's a good way to end it. Sal, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.